Would you say the cycle would have been similar to having, 3 or 4 Dianabol a day and a shot of Deca or Primabol a week?
For my time, believe it or not,
What's up guys, Derek from MorePlates180.com. Today we're going to be reacting to Danny Padilla's Golden Era Cycle in all caps. Screaming at me, exclamation marks, the giant killer interviews, exclamations, fucking screaming at me, caps locks. You know, Danny Padilla's Golden Era Cycle. This is by Golden Era Bookworm, and if you don't know Danny Padilla, he is, as you would guess, a Golden Era bodybuilder who was around during a time where there was less prevalent use of things like growth hormone. They were still using cadaver GH around this time, and most people just weren't using it as far as I know. Insulin wasn't a big thing yet. It was mostly synthetic anabolic agents, and testosterone during this time frame was actually frowned upon as a good use of androgen exposure. It was seen as a subpar compound, and it seemed like it was kind of introduced and kind of repopularized in the 90s. But in the 80s, a lot of these guys, or the 70s, the 80s, a lot of these guys were, resorting to synthetic anabolics that were seen as, superior to the root androgen they're based off of, testosterone. So things like Dianabol, a testosterone derivative, seen as superior to testosterone. Things like Nandrolone, derived from testosterone, 19-nortestosterone, seen as superior. Primobolan, obviously one of the most progressive compounds, most refined compounds there is, a DHT derivative, which ultimately comes from testosterone. And these were the kind of things being used by the guys in the 70s, 80s, onwards until the 90s, where, as well as Parabolone introduced in the later 80s, as far as if I recall correctly. People were using shit, random compounds like Belasterone and stuff like that. But in general, the tried and true, Deca, D-bol, this was the kind of stuff people were using. And Danny Padilla, as far as I know, I speculate he's going to be talking about Deca only, because a few people who have spoken to him before have told me about his use, and I imagine, they were reputable sources of information, so I can't imagine what he says here is going to differ much from that. But yeah, let's see what he says. Let's see if he comments on any other compounds, says, what he found the best, what was the most tolerable, what he found most useful, side effect context, stuff like that. Let's get into it. I'm gonna watch on 1.25 times speed, by the way.
Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here, and today we continue with the Giant Killer series of interviews, and in this video we listen to Danny as he details his Golden Era cycle, including the type of product he used, the length of the cycle, and the style of training he undertook during the cycle. Enjoy!
I know you haven't got into much detail, but would you say the cycle would have been similar to having, 3 or 4 Dianabol a day and a shot of Deca or Primabol a week?
for my time, believe it or not, I never used anything but Deca.
Okay, so yeah, if you've heard, Frank Zane, who else? Some of the anecdotes from some of the bodybuilders of the past. Arnold kind of made it sound like this as well. Rick Drazen, I believe. Some of the guys I've actually made videos about. Obviously, there's guys like Pete Grimkowski who just straight up said, I use 10 grams of shit. But then there's other individuals, and this is a fairly consistent story, that most guys were using a few Dianabol or a handful of, 3 to 4 Dianabol or whatever a day, and then a shot of Primo a week, and that was the cycle. But again, how many guys were underplaying their use? Is it realistic that there was, 230-pound onstage physiques using what, fucking I don't know, a few hundred milligrams per week of anabolics? It's, hard to believe with a lot of these guys. Some of these guys had the best, physiques that would be, formidable on a classic physique stage right now. Very, very fucking strong physiques, and the likelihood that they're doing essentially borderline high normal TRT in some cases, okay, not actually, because Dianabol's, therapeutic replacement dosage is 5 to 10 milligrams or something like that in an HRT context, clinically. But we're not looking at these, it's not high dosages that these guys are claiming they built their physiques on. So it should be interesting to see if Danny kind of reinforces that statement or says, it's complete horseshit.
Okay. So not even an oral like Dianabol?
Well, in the beginning, I used 3D ball, and then later, I just stayed with the Deca. And I never used test, and that's why I have a full head of hair at the age of 70. I never had for it.
Better than me.
And guys.
Okay, so interesting. He mentions how this is why he has a full head of hair at 70s, because he didn't touch test. So if you guys know, as far as like the hair safe compounds, I'll put a card to the most hair safe steroids. In that video, I kind of outline what I have seen anecdotally to be the most hair safe compounds through, you know, years and years of research and thousands of reports at this time. And in general, like DECA, when it's not paired with a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, and nandrolone specifically, not necessarily like the decanoate ester with nandrolone, nandrolone itself is the most hair safe compound when 5-alpha reductase is left alone. Obviously, it gets a bit murky where if you are somebody who is, you know, doing blast phases with test and you're on finasteride or dutasteride, you know, leveraging nandrolone in a cycle becomes a little more complicated because it's almost like you need to work out the 5-alpha reductase inhibitor before you can switch to the nandrolone if you don't want to end up with an inhibition of the ability to create the dihydronandrolone in your scalp, subsequently leaving nandrolone in your scalp to then wreak havoc, and it's actually not a hair safe compound whatsoever when 5-alpha reductase is inhibited, which is, you know, can create a very interesting seesaw of trying to manage your hair loss protocol during a, you know, a cutting or a blast phase or a bulking phase, whatever you want to call it, when you are deploying different kinds of compounds for different kinds of reasons. Because in general, you know, at some point, guys are going to be on test transitioning off of nandrolone, so it becomes a bit more problematic for kind of transitioning, making sure there's no 5-alpha reductase inhibition when you're on the nandrolone, and when you were on the test that you have 5-alpha reductase inhibited if you actually cared about hair loss. So it is inherently like the most hair safe compound when it's left alone to do what it does, but when other processes are inhibited, it can become worse than many other compounds. But is this the reason he has hair? Like, no, it comes a lot down to genetics, because obviously this guy has cycled off or has not been on nandrolone as replacement therapy for his entire life, as far as I know, unless he states otherwise now. But I imagine he is either natural or on TRT now. So claiming your hair is still here because you took like nandrolone cycles back in your heyday, that obviously doesn't make sense, because people go bald even on natural amounts of test in their body, you know? Like, how many guys end up with hair loss just from natural hormone production? Like, almost every fucking guy. So to say that your nandrolone cycles like fucking 30, 40 years ago or whatever are the reason you have hair now, even though you have your natural test or you're on TRT, you know, makes no sense. It's just kind of, maybe it would be worse if he didn't do nandrolone only cycles and he was doing, you know, fucking, you know, test plus Masteron plus fucking Halo plus this plus that, all that kind of shit back then. But this is more of a saying how good his hair genetics are rather than saying that the nandrolone itself saved it, unless he's somehow been on like a weird like makeshift nandrolone HRT this entire time.
You know, and guys would say try the Anadrol, but anytime I did research, the experts that I talked to would say, Danny, orals are so bad for you. You don't want to use the orals, they'll kill you. And so I basically was shy. And you know what? I never planned on being this guy. It was all about lifting, looking good, competing a little bit, and then going home. It wasn't about anything else. I never thought that I was going to be a star of some sort. I never thought that I was going to be the giant killer. It was all...
See, what's interesting is a lot of you have to consider, these are like, think about how many athletes have said, I would literally like cut like 20 to 30 years off my life or whatever it was. It was like, I would like let myself only live another 5 to 10 years if it meant I would win like an Olympic gold or something. Like, so many athletes who this is their life have said that. But then in bodybuilding, it's interesting because you have a lot of these golden era guys, or, you know, other even current era guys who will claim like, oh, I'm like too scared to touch orals, or oh, I was too scared to push the dosage up. And it's like you were trying to win the Mr. Olympia against guys you probably thought were taking more than you in order to, like, if they were doing better than you. Like, how likely is it that the majority of these guys were doing like one shot of Primo a week and a couple Dianabol a day, when guys they were competing against, like Arnold, they probably assumed were taking way more than them? If they weren't beating them, I can't imagine it would have not crossed the majority of their minds to try more shit, to try and improve, to beat these guys. Like, these are literal Olympians trying to beat other Olympians. What is the likelihood they wouldn't have, you know, taken an oral because they were fucking a little bit scared of it? You know, like most Olympic athletes will say, like, I would be willing to die in like a handful of years in order to win the gold versus to live to 70 and like not win. So yeah, like, why would Mr. Olympia competitors be all of a sudden like way more health conscious than like other Olympic athletes? Like, I don't really buy it, to be honest. You know, I used to like to take at face value what they were saying because their stories were pretty consistent, but the likelihood that all these individuals were so conservative on their dosages, highly unlikely. Now, were they pushing Grimkowski numbers? Probably not. That guy seemed to like That guy was like the Boston Lloyd of like the fucking 70s or 80s or whatever. But I imagine there were individuals pushing the envelope more. Now, is Padilla one of those individuals? You know, I don't know. I haven't watched enough of his stuff, but I don't know if I necessarily doubt that he only used DECA for the majority of his cycles. All I'm saying is I think the overall exposure to anabolics on a weekly basis is severely underplayed in some of these guys that want to make it seem like people just don't train hard enough, they don't diet hard enough, everyone's just relying on drugs now, Golden Era was so much sicker, blah, blah, blah. You know, that's a common theme you see among guys who, you know, reflect so favorably on the Golden Era and shit on guys now. It's always like, oh, everyone's so lazy, no one gets in shape, blah, blah, blah. We barely use shit, you guys train like pussies. And it's like, is that really the case? Is that really the case?
It was all about, I love to work out. I love to train. I was pretty strong for a little guy.
Okay, and by the way, maybe it's true in some cases, obviously. I'm just saying, like, as a blanket statement, I don't necessarily think it's true.
And so it was in the gym, do my thing, and then I would disappear for weeks once the show was over. And only later in my career, when we just said, "Yeah, you gotta train longer now. You know, you're that guy." I said, "Joe, longer training means more money. You gonna pay me more?" And so, you know, they were always shy with paying you.
Oh yeah.
But so I said, "I gotta go to work. I don't got no woman supporting me. I gotta go to work." And he's like, "Oh, I'll give you a couple hours when I come out for a show. Then we'll do that." And that's the way I did it. So most of the time, I lifted off season and I stuck to the basics. I didn't even take any steroids off season. There was no reason to.
Yeah.
I was still pretty strong. I was young, and I could maintain 80% of what I built just through, you know, I would train 6 days a week still, but soft workout. I would do a couple sets of squats, you know, for leg squats, leg press, lunges, leg curl, leg extension, a lot of calf work, and then chest. I never changed.
It's interesting because, again, like if you're trying to win, again, an Mr. Olympia title, what's the likelihood you're going to do your entire offseason naturally when you know, like, you literally, what you do is going to be dictated a lot by hormone exposure? You know, like, seems unlikely that so many of these guys just did absolutely nothing in the offseason and were totally natty and then, you know, just blasted for like fucking 8 to 12 weeks for the Olympia. You know, I imagine guys, like, it's not a coincidence that guys nowadays are pretty much like off for like a couple months at best. And are they really off, or are they just clearing shit out of their systems and trying to get a transient, decently looking, acceptably not horrendous looking blood panel and then just hop back on? Which, by the way, is not the worst thing, to give yourself like actual organ, like give your organs a break. I'm just saying that nowadays, like, no one's really like truly off to the point that their HPTA doesn't have some negative feedback, there's not residual activity of something. So when you see guys now who retain all their tissue when they're off, you know, they're not actually off. They would lose way fucking more. They wouldn't just sit there and like maintain almost everything when they are off nowadays. Rather, they are almost off, but not quite. They're never quite off. I don't know very many pro bodybuilders now that are ever off. So individuals who are trying to improve every year, it's highly unlikely they're going to be coming off. Maybe it's different in the 80s for Padilla. He's a shorter guy. He is the giant killer after all. Maybe you have a lot more leeway when you have a smaller frame to fill out. So I'm not saying he's lying, by the way. I'm just saying, like, as a tangent off that, talking about the golden era in general, because this is another big potential myth or perpetuated thing, is that every single guy was like super health conscious and they only blasted like 10 weeks or 8 weeks before the Olympia, and then everyone was like clean all the fucking time after that. Maybe some of them were, sure. You know, I'm not, you know, it's not like they had as ridiculous of physiques to maintain and build on as guys nowadays. So, you know, it's certainly plausible for some of them who were like hyper responders and shit, but I imagine some of them were like pretty much like year round trying to improve too.
Or change. Bench, incline, fly, pull over. That was it. Barbell row, pull down, seated row, dumbbell rows once in a while, and a lot of chins. And then some hyper stuff. And then, of course, your deadlifts. But I never changed the workout. So years after year, I got stronger. Evidently, I got thicker. So it took a long time to be that good. Whereas today, you know, the guys tell me in 12 weeks, I'm going to weigh 986 pounds. I said, good luck.
Exactly.
So it's all different.
Yeah. I did forget one little thing. So you mentioned that the products that you used. How many weeks prior to the contest?
I never used. From week one, I would be on a product for 12 weeks. Done. That's it.
Okay. 12.
And the rest of the year, I was off.
All right.
That's
cool.
what I did. So if I did 2 shows a year, I did two cycles, 12 weeks, done. I would go get blood work, get checked, and that was it. Because, you know, in my family, my mother's side, a lot of heart disease, genetically. So I had to be careful, because even at the age of 22, my cholesterol was high.
Okay, so keep in mind what he said here about the duration of exposure.
Okay, 12
And the
weeks.
rest of the year I was off. I would be on the product for 12 weeks, done. That's it.
Okay, 12
And the
weeks.
rest of the year I was off.
So 12 weeks with 2 cycles a year, 24 weeks in total.
All right.
That's
cool.
what I did. So if I did 2 shows a year, I did two cycles. 12 weeks, done.
But 24 weeks of exposure using nandrolone decanoate, we're talking about a very long ester. So how much of the year are you actually off? Not that much still. You know, this sounds like very minimal exposure, but when you actually factor in the amount of time your HPTA is suppressed, there's still pretty minimal off time. So yeah, it sounds like it's like, oh yeah, just like 1 cycle a year, 12 weeks, when in reality, you know, if they were doing 2 shows, boom, that's like, you know, half a year. And then when you factor in the amount of time you're suppressed too, it's like, boom, you're pushed up to like what, like 3/4 of the year you're actually on. And for like 1/4 of the year, maybe you're hormone free entirely with your HPTA non-suppressed and sort of rebounding, you know? So it's not like at the end of the day, these guys, a lot of them were still on like year round for the most part.
12 weeks, done. I would go get blood work, get checked, and that was it. Because, you know, in my family, my mother's side, a lot of heart disease, genetically. So I had to be careful because even at the age of 22, my cholesterol was high.
Right.
And I wasn't even on anything.
Thank you, Danny. You know, you've been more than generous. I didn't expect that you'd be so open about it.
And by the way, if you are on a blast phase and you have high cholesterol issues and it's problematic, first of all, visiting your diet model is obviously the first thing you should be doing, and basic, you know, lifestyle habits and whatnot. But above and beyond that, as far as pharmacology, something we've talked about a few times now on the Super Physiological Man podcast is Ezetimibe. This is a very, very well-tolerated drug that seems to be fairly innocuous, and it's something we, I think, was brought to the limelight by Leo in particular. And it seems like a fairly well-tolerated compound that has a very, very positive impact on total cholesterol values and LDL and even HDL to some extent. So this is something to probably look at with your doctor who is overseeing your care if you are a bodybuilder who exposes yourself to super physiological doses of androgens and has a fucked up lipid profile, because your citrus bergamot and your fucking nicotinic acid is not going to cut it, unfortunately. And this isn't for everyone. I'm just saying, like, if you have actual like fucked up lipids, like this might be something to look at above and beyond. Like there's obviously, is it PCSK9 or PCSK9 inhibitors, I believe. Was it Repatha? Obviously a very efficacious medicine for cholesterol management and whatnot, obviously, but it's very, very hard to get if you don't have familial hypercholesterolemia, and it's also very, very expensive. Especially if you're not getting it through insurance covered. But like traditional statins and whatnot, like I think Ezetimibe is something that would be worth looking at before you go the like aggressive cholesterol management route. And when I say aggressive, I mean things that are less well tolerated and are more side effect ridden. So something to run by your doctor. Obviously, I'm just giving, you know, suggestions of stuff to look into, not stuff to do, stuff to look into and run by your doctor for staying safe and not ending up with fucking plaque buildup
That you've talked about today. So, yeah,
Listen,
thank you.
when I tell you that, they're not going to believe you anyways.
And obviously, again, let's not, you know, discount the fact that inflammation and everything is going to play a factor. And if you actually have plaque development above and beyond, like your lipid profile itself isn't necessarily the cause. I think most of us know that by now, but most individuals on fucking super physiological doses of androgens who are eating a shit ton of food and exposing their life to this kind of stress are probably going to have a significant amount of inflammation, even from just like basic shit that you won't think of, like your carrier oil from your UGL trend that you're using pre-contest. Like this kind of stuff can cause massive amounts of inflammation in the body and can be very problematic and can lead to precursors of cardiovascular disease. So this is stuff, again, to be mindful of and not just assume, oh, my diet's clean, oh, I sleep good, and blah, 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 so I'm probably safe. Like, you don't fucking know, dude. So run by your doctor, go over your bloods regularly, look at your genetic predispositions, ideally get a genetic analysis done. This is the kind of stuff that bodybuilders should be doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, anyway, that's all he's full of it. He took tons of shit, I know, and I did.
Well,
that's a fact. That's all I ever used. And because back in my day, they had guys who were using Anavar, Maxibol, and you know, they had all kinds of crap. And I never bothered with it. Back in my day, when I was 24, 25, the D-ball, 5 milligrams, 3 times a day, you grew like a balloon. So now you got D-ball 50 milligrams. How real can it be? What is it that it's got to be 50 milligrams? So it's, I don't understand. And the Anadrol was around in my day, but it was taboo because it was considered pretty rough. And a lot of powerlifters would use the Anadrol. Not interested. And, you know, I always tell guys, if you're going to use meds that high, it should only be so many weeks before a show, a couple weeks. Once you're in shape and you need a little help, but not so many weeks in a row. Because We know that orals go in and out of your body pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get an instant result. Look, if I'm not the guy who says take all the steroids you want, but there would be a lot of dead people today if steroids were killers. Are they dangerous? Just like anything else. In the wrong hands, look, aspirin's good for you. If you take a bottle of aspirin, you're dead. And if you have a drink once in a while, it's okay. If you drink every day, you got problems. So it's like anything else. In moderation, I'm not promoting it, but I'm saying if you're going to do it, you should always seek medical care.
Yeah.
You know, do the blood work, check your cholesterol levels, make sure you're working, because we know testosterone destroys the heart. A lot of guys don't know that, but high doses of test does heart damage.
Wow.
Organ imaging too, obviously, above and beyond just basic blood work. Having organ imaging on a semi-regular basis, at least, you know, every couple of years or so, and especially before you expose yourself to this shit, good idea.
Again, awesome talk, Danny. Can't thank you enough. One little request: do you want to flex your biceps?
There's nothing left.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah, they're better than mine. You're still the giant killer, Danny. For sure. Awesome. Thank you, mate. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure.
All right.
We'll talk again soon, Danny, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Take care of yourself.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay, so this is what he used to look like, by the way, back in his heyday. Kind of like a I don't know if he's necessarily like a Columbo kind of physique. Columbo, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but you know, a shorter guy, hence the nickname. And at least, is this him? I think it's him. I can't imagine you would have footage of somebody else here. Yeah, here he is, Danny Padilla, with the sick fucking Beatles haircut, looking sauced out of his goddamn mind. Looking sick, dude. Great physique. Obviously kind of hard to tell with this potato footage, but you take what you can get from the fucking 70s and 80s, obviously. Can you imagine how annoying it would be to be a bodybuilder who like grew up in the, well, I guess it kind of depends. Like if you grew up in the 70s and the 80s, like obviously you could become a legend just by like your presence in that era, but it would also be very annoying to like be old and like not have been able to monetize your rise in stardom like people can nowadays. Like that, I can't imagine how annoying that must be to look back on for some of the guys who, because nowadays you can be like not even successful and fucking kill it in the fitness industry, whereas back then it's like if you weren't a top guy, it's like no one really gave a fuck as far as I know. So that's an unfortunate thing that is you know, I guess just lucky timing for some people nowadays. Like we're certainly blessed to be in this era where any individual can excel in the fitness industry, even if you're not a genetically blessed individual and you have like high quality knowledge and, you know, high quality, I don't know, training techniques, or you're great at, you know, whatever, physiotherapy, or fucking, I don't know, teaching people how to, you know, become more healthy through diet. Stuff like that is, you know, welcomed. You don't have to be a, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger in order to get rich in this industry, which is, you know, awesome nowadays. And it's, I almost feel like it's just unfortunate that guys like Danny weren't around, you know, in current day. I would love to see some of these golden era guys like have their rise to stardom in like current day and see what happens to them. But that is just a, you know, again, a timing thing, kind of a, I guess a bit of a depressing end of the video. But anyway, like obviously the guy has, you know, cemented his legendary status for being in that era, and he has a great physique. And very interesting to hear the outline of the nandrolone only usage. Deca only with some D-ball here, and there was pretty common back in the days. For today's standards, that would be considered crazy and something only a complete noob would do. Very sad what bodybuilding has turned into. The silver and golden era is what bodybuilding is to me. Let's see. Danny seems like such a good guy. Glad to see he kept some size. Did you see that bicep shot? Great content. Loved his openness. He got robbed at the 81 Olympia. Video on Deca only cycle will be awesome. Oh shit. You truly outdid yourself with this one. Hoping Derek covers this. Here I am. Derek? Add more plates, more dates. He wishes. I have all the cycles. He mostly speculates. Well, I guess I'm fucking making it, dude. And I think I've already discussed this in elaborate detail many times, but I like the arrogant response. And you know, still check out this guy's channel. He brought the interview, you know, to the forefront and spent the time to sit down with the guy. I don't know why he gets fucking butthurt, but apparently he is a butthurt guy for seemingly no reason. You know, people were both trying to bring information to the forefront, and Like, have I not like covered Pete Grimkowski? Have I not covered these individuals already in elaborate detail? Have I not covered the 90 cycles where Tom Platz literally sat down with fucking legends of the sport and got them to break down their usage? It's the exact same fucking thing, dude. Like, obviously I'm not the one interviewing them, so you could argue otherwise, but I'm trying to interpret it in a way that is more palatable for the user or the, you know, viewer as well, and can relate it with more you know, medical context too, so you don't fuck yourself up and you know what to talk to your doctor about when it comes to your blood work. So I don't get this answer. I don't know why you said that. Kind of turned me off a bit. Not certain, but I expect a video covering this soon. I doubt he'd trash talk Danny though. He's a genetic marvel. Yeah, absolutely. The guy's a phenom, and that's, you know, anybody who's transparent about their use, you know, kudos to them, because they certainly don't have to. When two noble men meet, Danny Padilla, aka the original giant killer, and you, bro, golden era bookworm, your work rocks. Amazing genetics and work ethic, like the honesty, as most today lie about being on gear, like a big keto YouTube guy. What the fuck? One shot of Deca per week, and what doses Franco also wrote in his book about 3 tablets of Dianabol is the best dose. Yeah, again, this is like the standard thing that people are writing about. Yep. Rick Drazen said in the 70s they used to do 3 Dianabol a day and 1 shot a week. And by the way, this is Frank Zane reinforced this as well in that poem that I made a video about before. This has been talked about, and Arnold talked about similar usage in his, I believe it was the Total Recall book. Some of the stuff, if you want to dig through some of my golden era content, I have discussed this stuff numerous times. Just not Danny's cycle in particular specifically. Or maybe I have, to be honest. I might have touched on it in passing, talking about the Deca only usage. Did he mention how much Deca per week, how many times he pinned it? Once a week. Did he say how much off camera and talk about side effects during and post cycle? Nope. Such short answers. Sheesh. In those days, that was the protocol. 15-20 milligrams D-ball per day and 100 to 200 Deca per week. Some only used D-ball, nothing else, but it was not used not for size, but for physical recovery, and the products were pharmaceutical and not UGL. Yeah, so anyway, that is my stance on it. You know, me reacting to it, me giving my sort of oversight of it. You know, obviously when it comes to Deca only as well, a problem you could run into when it comes to safety is a potential lack of sufficient estrogen to provide neuroprotection and cardio protection. And this is why you see in studies that it seems like adding in growth hormone even exogenously to a nandrolone cycle seems to provide a significant neuroprotective effect. And is this, you know, a result of the upregulation and effect that GH has on estrogen production and or estrogen receptor sensitivity? Seems to have some significant overlap, and it is definitely something to consider, as I've also discussed in my nandrolone only cycle videos, where I deep dived into my blood work, talked about estrogen deficiency and whatnot, the kind of implications using nandrolone only may have, and how to potentially circumvent that, and or things to at least watch out for and be mindful of. So check out those videos if you haven't seen them on my channel, and I'm sure Golden Era Bookworm has other videos with other interviews, so it's probably worth checking out his stuff and subscribing too. So drop a like on his video, and hope you guys enjoyed that. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, check out my blog, moreplacemordates.com. Follow me on Instagram at moreplacemordates. Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, not BitChute, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, you can check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My TRT clinic, all telemedicine from the comfort of your own home, Gorilla Mind, nootropic formulas, Gorilla Mode, pre-workout formulas, and design myself from scratch. Recommended lab tests and diagnostics. Stay on top of your health. Make sure you are getting proper biomarkers assessed during, like, pre-cycle, mid-cycle, post-cycle, or just to stay on top of your health would be a highly recommended thing to be doing on a regular basis. And get high quality interpretation by doctors who know their shit and have been vetted by myself. So anything else I'm associated with too, it is in the video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.